Hello there, very good evening to you. On behalf of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, we would like to wish our viewers a very happy Eid. I'm Sharika Tahir.
And I'm Thilina Udayaratna. For starters, we take a look at tonight's top stories. The Director General of Health Services gives a green light to the Elections Commission with regard to holding the general election. The President, in a message to mark Ramazan, states that in an era like the present, to create a peaceful living environment, self-control needs to be practiced. The Prime Minister states that economic growth achieved during his regime was destroyed by the regime of good governance. Spanish nationals oppose quarantine regulations. Inter-provincial bus services to be operational from the 26th of this month, except in the Colombo and Kampala districts. Ceasefires declared between the Afghan government and the Taliban.
We move on to those and other stories in detail now. A look at local news. Director General of Health Services Consultant Dr. Anil Jasinger says, as lockdowns are being eased in many aspects, restricting the general election is not justifiable. Dr. Jasinger expressed these views joining in the Sunday I-Born discussion program telecast over Rupavahini today. When a question was put forward regarding the main headline in many newspapers yesterday with regard to the election, Dr. Jasinger expressed these views. Director General of Health Services Consultant Dr. Anil Jasinger observed that in a democratic country, the holding of elections is an utmost necessity, and when elections are not held, it can cause issues. He noted that there have been instances in which elections have been postponed, such as when a tense situation prevails in the country, or when elections are postponed in an anti-democratic manner, or when elections can be held in various ways and at various places in an advantageous manner to supporters affiliated with the government. Dr. Jasinger notes that the right to exercise one's franchise is a civic right, and under the new situation of normalcy, when many aspects are discussed, it is not possible to drop the topic of elections from discussions. He further stated that under the new situation of normalcy, the country will further open up in the days ahead. Therefore, Dr. Jasinger says that withdrawing the elections is unsuitable.
Something that changes your life story. Litro Gas.
Devotees of Islam over the world celebrate Ramazan today. After a 1-month-long fasting period, the Ramazan festival dawns with the sighting of the new moon last night. The Colombo Grand Mosque has notified that with the sighting of the new moon yesterday, Ramazan is celebrated today. The All Ceylon Jamiyatullah Ulama organization calls on the Muslim community to celebrate Ramazan on a low-key as guidelines mandated by health and security units need to be followed as part of the steps taken to control the spread of the coronavirus. Thereby, Ramazan celebrations were restricted to each person's residence today. The followers of Islam dedicate themselves to Allah the Almighty during the holy month of Ramazan. The month of Ramazan is regarded as a month in which the holy night at which the Holy Quran was gifted down by Allah. After a month of fasting, Muslims celebrate Eid al-Fitr today. Due to steps taken by the government of Saudi Arabia to control the Covid-19 pandemic, the tomb of the Prophet, which is a focal point in the faith of Islam, remained deserted today. Nationwide curfew has been imposed in Saudi Arabia until the 27th of this month. However, to mark Ramazan, even amidst the imposed curfew, a very few devotees arrived to worship the sacred site whilst adhering to social distancing guidelines. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, issuing a message to mark Ramazan, extends his heartiest greetings to all Muslims in Sri Lanka who are celebrating the festival together with Islam devotees around the world. The President in his message notes that Fasting during the month of Ramazan, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, conveys the message of the importance of adhering to an exemplary practice while abstaining from luxuries. The President notes that this period of abstinence is a great opportunity to develop sensitivity towards others, as Ramazan rituals demonstrate that one could create a peaceful living environment in an era like this, when the entire world is facing a highly complex crisis hitherto not existed in history. The President observes that the spirit of Islamic brotherhood that existed in Sri Lankan society since the ancient times is exemplary to the world, and any harm to that camaraderie caused due to the acts of a small number of extremists should never be allowed, as true Islamic devotees believe that extremist beliefs are against the core values of Islam. Hence, the President believes that devotees should strongly commit themselves to following the teachings of the Holy Quran whilst eliminating mistrust and suspicion during this period of Ramazan. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, issuing a message to mark Ramazan, extends his felicitations to all Muslims who are celebrating the Ramazan festival today after observing a 1-month-long fasting period, even amidst the Covid-19 health crisis. In the message, the Premier entreats for Allah the Almighty to accept the act of fasting and meritorious acts observed by the followers of Islam during the month leading to Ramazan. The Premier, in the release, further calls for supplications to be made of Allah the Almighty God to rid the country and the entire world from the ongoing pandemic. Since guidelines mandated by health and security units need to be followed, this year festivities to mark Ramazan are being held in a solemn manner.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa inherited an economy that was in shambles on November 16, 2019. The entire world has been engulfed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Prime Minister has said that a worldwide economic crisis reminiscent of the 1930s Great Depression is widely expected to follow the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa made these remarks while issuing a statement today. In 2014, Sri Lanka was among the fastest growing economies in Asia. Economic growth averaged 6% during the war years from 2006 to 2009 and increased to 7.4% in the post-war years from 2010 to 2014. The debt to gross domestic product ratio was reduced from 90% in 2005 to 75% at the end of 2014. The all-share price index in the Colombo Stock Exchange rose from 1,922 in 2005 to 7,299 by the end of 2014. Sri Lanka's per capita GDP in the US dollar terms increased threefold from $1,242 in 2005 to $3,819 by the end of 2014. The biggest infrastructure building program in post-independence history was also carried out between 2006 and 2014. This economic boom was achieved despite the war, the global food crisis of 2007, the global financial crisis of 2008-2009, and the highest crude oil prices in history. Crude oil cost an average of $74 per barrel from 2006 to 2009 and $103 from 2010 to 2014. After January 2015, the progress of the country went in reverse. The economic growth rate dropped to 5% in 2015 and declined year after year, ending up at 2.3% by 2019. The value of the US dollar appreciated against the rupee from 130 rupees in 2014 to 181 rupees by October 2019. Sri Lanka's total outstanding debt increased by 74.4% from 7.39 trillion rupees at the end of 2014 to 12.89 trillion rupees by October 2019. Between January 2015 and October 2019, the total foreign currency borrowings of the Yahapalana government in the form of sovereign bonds, Sri Lanka development bonds, syndicated loans, and currency swaps totaled over $26 billion. Despite this borrowing spree, absolutely nothing of lasting value was built by the Yahapalana government. The all-share price index declined from 7,299 in 2014 to 5,990 by the end of October 2019. Yet during the entire period from 2015 to 2019, the average price of crude oil was $60 per barrel US dollars, the lowest in recent history. No external global reasons impacted on the economic collapse occurred during Yahapalana government period. India and Bangladesh experienced robust growth between 2015 and 2019. The Easter Sunday bombings of April 2019 exacerbated the Yahapalana recession. In this new global environment, even the option of migrating overseas in search of greener pastures will be limited as all countries are facing economic hardship and mass unemployment. The Covid-19 pandemic has left all Sri Lankans with only one option: building Sri Lanka, as the choice is stark: pull together or perish. When the Secretary to the President, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, in his capacity as the foremost officer of the public service, recently appealed to public servants to contribute any amount they can from their salaries to tide over the crisis, yet the opposition attacked him viciously. The statement has pointed out that, knowing fully well that this was only a request for voluntary contributions, the opposition attempted to portray the request as a compulsory deduction. Dr. Jayasundara played a central role in the 2006 to 2014 economic boom. Yet the opposition expects to undermine the government's economic recovery efforts by singling out the attacking, such as skilled state officials and such as the Secretary to the President. The statement has indicated that the nation should realize that the Yahapalana political culture of vilification and false propaganda has no place in the post-Covid-19 world. In the difficult times that lies ahead, Sri Lanka's economic survival and the futures of the country's children depend on the vision, ability and skill of those governing the country. German Chancellor Angela Merkel recently stated that Covid-19 had hit Germany at a time when the economy was blooming well and they had the strength to face the crisis. The situation in Sri Lanka was the exact opposite. The nation should be mindful of this reality and make the choices and decisions accordingly. The statement has also pointed out that the nation is aware of the plight of the country if the Yahapalana faction had been in power when the Covid-19 pandemic hit Sri Lanka. The party which governs the country, from the president and the officials down the hierarchy, won a war that was deemed unwinnable and presided over the greatest economic boom since independence despite impossible odds between 2006 and 2014. The statement issued by the Premier pointed out that this is the kind of leadership needed to steer the country forward in the post-Covid-19 world.
Now, taking a look at the COVID-19 situation in the country, 14 fully recovered COVID-19 patients were discharged from their respective hospitals today. 1,998 PCR tests were conducted yesterday, and it is the highest number of PCR tests to be conducted so far. The number of COVID-19 patients undergoing hospitalized treatment currently stands at 434. Today, 28 newly infected persons were detected from amongst a group of returnees from Kuwait. 5 of them had been undergoing quarantine at the Trincomalee Quarantine Centre, whilst 23 of them were undergoing quarantine at the Min Area Quarantine Centre. The total number of fully recovered COVID-19 patients currently stands at 674, and this accounts for 60%. The percentage of fully recovered persons has surpassed the number of patients undergoing treatment due to COVID-19. Patients undergoing treatment account for 38%. The COVID-19 death rate in the country currently stands at 0.80%. Director General of Health Services Consultant Dr. Anil Jasinga says regarding Navy personnel, 237 persons have completed quarantine, whilst the Navy has been informed to release fully recovered COVID-19 infected Navy personnel. The other Navy personnel are continuing to undergo quarantine and treatment. He also stated that the number of PCR tests conducted yesterday exceeds the number of tests done the day before. Thereby, Dr. Jasinga points out that over 50,000 PCR tests were conducted so far, with 1,998 tests being conducted yesterday. In the situation ahead, in order to continuously carry out PCR testing, currently 20 laboratories, including 4 laboratories of the private sector, are being deployed, and these laboratories are being closely monitored these days. Dr. Jasinga added that all these laboratories are subject to internal standardization. He further stated that going forward, with aid from the World Health Organization, steps will be taken to standardize some of for these laboratories by affiliating them with the laboratory of Professor Malik Piris in Hong Kong, whilst standardizing some of them in line with the standardization methods in the UK. Meanwhile, 20 newly infected persons were detected yesterday, out of which 18 of them are security force personnel, whilst the other 2 are from amongst returnees from Dubai. They have been sent into quarantine at the Giragama Quarantine Centre. Measures to fly back stranded Sri Lankan migrants are continuously underway. A flight returned from Dhaka in Bangladesh this morning as well, with a group of 276 returnees. Meanwhile, the Foreign Employment Bureau states that a special flight will fly back 280 Sri Lankans from Qatar tomorrow. Views were expressed on repatriating Sri Lankans stranded overseas at a media briefing held at the Government Information Department today. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardene says migrant Sri Lankans will be flown back to the country according to the priority list. Thereby, a group of Sri Lankans are to be flown back daily until the 6th of June. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardene explained that a priority list, which includes overseas students, migrant Sri Lankan workers, short-term visa holders, those who need to be flown back on humanitarian grounds, those who have lost their jobs, and other categories of persons stranded overseas need to be arranged, and the President needs to approve on the group that is to be flown back. All those who are to be flown back will be systematically quarantined. Therefore, he calls on migrant Sri Lankans to wait patiently, as all measures to fly them back will be taken as soon as possible. A group of 110 persons who completed their quarantine at the facility run by the Army at the Burala Ayurveda Hospital were discharged today. They were sent in for quarantine upon arriving from Australia recently. Upon being discharged from the quarantine centre, they voluntarily donated a sum of 825,000 rupees to the fund of Covid-19. Island-wide curfew will be enforced today and tomorrow. The President's Media Division issuing a release states that with effect from this Tuesday, movement between districts will be permitted except for in the Colombo and Gampaha districts. In addition, with effect from this Tuesday, curfew will be in place in all districts from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. until further notice. The number of curfew violators arrested during the curfew period from the 20th of March up to 6 a.m. today is 62,677, whilst the number of vehicles that have been seized is 17,612. The police headquarters states that legal action has been taken against close upon 20,000 of these curfew violators. Meanwhile, interprovincial bus services are due to recommence operations from the 26th of this month. Thereby, interprovincial bus services will be operational in all districts except for in the Gampaha and Colombo districts. Interprovincial buses coming from along the Colombo-Kandy main road will run only up to Nittambua. Interprovincial buses arriving along the number 5 route will run up to Minuangoda. Interprovincial buses arriving along Gaul Road will run up to Panadura, whilst buses arriving along high-level and low-level roads will run up to Avissavella. Interprovincial buses arriving from Anuradhapura, Putlam and Kuliapitiya, which head for Colombo along the Nigambo road, need to terminate their journey in Nigambo. And in the meantime, Minister Mahinda Amaraveera says a number of passengers corresponding to the number of seats will be permitted to travel in both CTB and private buses. Well, coming back to more local news, Minister of Education Dallas Alahaperuma says schools will be reopened only once the safety of children is 100% guaranteed. Speaking at a discussion held at the Mathura District Secretariat recently, the minister said that no steps will be taken in which the lives of students will be placed at risk. There are a higher number of schools, while certain schools have a limited number of students which are being run in areas that were not at risk by being affected of COVID-19. However, the reopening of schools will happen according to national policy and parents do not need to panic.
The State Person Festival will be held at the historic Mihintale's sacred site. Chief Incumbent of the Mihintale Rajamaha Vihare, Venerable Valava Hanganuvave Dhammaratana Thera, calls on the devotees to mark the Poson full moon Poya Day by adhering to guidelines mandated by the health authorities and with discipline. This year's State Poson Festival will be held under the patronage of the President and the Prime Minister. The Poson Week has been declared from the 2nd to the 8th of next month, and many religious observances have been organized centered around the Mihintale sacred site during this period. The Ministry of Buddha Sasana, Cultural and Religious Affairs calls on devotees to engage in religious rites on Poson Poya Day in the same manner in which they engaged in religious rites for Vesak. Rupavahini will air a live telecast of religious activities on Poson Full Moon Poya Day. In the meantime, the time period to certify applications for students who sat for the advanced level examination as school applicants and have qualified for university entrance has been further extended. Previously, the date for certifying applications was extended since schools were closed down due to the COVID-19 spread, thereby issuing a re-release. The Ministry of Education states that the principal or the deputy principal of each school should take steps to certify the relevant applications on the 3 days, which are the 27th, 28th and 29th of this month. The ministry also emphasizes that it is mandatory to follow health and safety guidelines.
Testifying before the Presidential Commission inquiring into the Easter Sunday attacks today, the security manager of the Taj Samudra Hotel stated that the suicide bomber who triggered an explosion at the Tropical Inn Lodge in Dehivala on Easter Sunday stayed at the Taj Samudra Hotel the previous day, and in addition, the register which included this individual's name had already been sent to the State Intelligence Division and the President's Security Division. He added, a register of the guests staying at the hotel is sent to the relevant authorities and divisions on a daily basis. The security manager of the Taj Samudra Hotel stated before the commission that on the 20th of April 2019, the bomber who arrived as a walking guest into the hotel booked room number 365, left his baggage and left the hotel a few moments later. The three drivers of the three-wheelers the bomber hailed to reach Tropical Inn in Dehivala also testified before the commission today. The three-wheeler driver who picked up the bomber near Taj said that he assumed that his passenger was a foreigner. The driver further stated that although his passenger arranged the hire to reach Dehivala, he suddenly stopped the three-wheeler and got off in Vellavatta. The second three-wheeler driver testified before the commission, stating that thereafter at around 9:25 a.m. the bomber hired his three-wheeler with the intention of reaching Dehivala. The driver further stated that after about 15 minutes into the journey, his passenger stated that he needs to reach a lodge situated along the Dehivala Zoo Road, and thereby he was transported to the Tropical Inn. It was revealed before the commission that since the day was a Sunday where a higher number of visitors arrive at the Dehivala Zoological Gardens, the bomber had in fact been focusing his attention on the zoo. Well, that's all we've got for you this evening from the Rupavahini English News. Join us once again tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching. Take care. Good night.
Good night.